I'm looking for. Oh, you can remove the mask if you want to. Shall we give it another go? Those of you who can't do so, you can say Jovicho. A little bit louder, please. We're preparing for the IATF. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I wanted to do that because I can see some of you feeling so sorry for me. Thinking, oh, this poor moderator hobbling up the stairs. How many times is she going to do this? This is not a crude dramatization of where our African economies are, in case you think this is why they did it. But it is fair warning to say if we are on a slippery slope, we might just end up here. A very good morning to you all. My name is Tshepiso Makwetla. I have the pleasure of being your moderator this morning for this prestigious event. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the Johannesburg leg of the Roadshow for the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2021. I am a journalist. In my other life, I'm also a healthcare activist, mainly for maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health. So let's talk about this roadshow, the reason that you're here. Firstly, let me apologize, a huge apology for starting so late, but we just wanted you to enjoy the music, to be honest. And I'm sure you'd agree the playlist was great, right? You could see my aide there said, any minute now, if you don't start, I'm just going to break out into dance. So that entertainment is still coming. He's shying away now, but as you know, this roadshow positions itself as a multi-stakeholder platform to engage and exchange on trade matters that include and are not necessarily limited to government, captains of industry, as well as the private sector. So to be more specific, we've got in our midst, I'd like to give a warm welcome and acknowledge the HOD of the KwaZulu-Natal Economic Development, Mr. Nhlakanipho Nkontwana. We will also be joined at a later stage by Ms. Leila Mokadam, who is the Director General for the Southern African Development Bank. We will also be joined by the Group Executive Officer, the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency at a later stage, but we'll also be joined by a representative of the DBSA. In fact, let me just give you all of those names. Unfortunately, we've had some changes to our lineup, which you may note on your sheet before you, but let me welcome to our midst, as we mentioned, Ms. Leila Mokadam will be joining us in a short while. Mr. Joseph Nsigwana Mashimbia of the South African Ambassador to Egypt. His Excellency, thank you very much for joining us, as well as our panelists. We'll announce them later on, but I just want to talk about the reason that we are here as well. Ms. Gwen Mwaba, Director, Global Head, Trade Finance, African Export-Import Bank, Afrixim Bank, will also be telling us a little bit about the reason why we're here. But I want to hark back to the actual event and how we came back here. So we can't talk about this event without looking back at history. Others that will follow, that will culminate in the event in Durban, will look back at this. African kingdoms that have for centuries fallen and risen again. Post-colonial African states in the 1960s, as you know, they found themselves in a position where they couldn't assert themselves and had to look to regional integration. So they relied on integration for development, to build on the continent's development. But from the onset, there have always been plans to reach this point. If you look at, for the last 5 decades, for instance, there have been mixed outcomes. There have been failures, there have been successes, but from the formation of the OAU, which then later became the AU, as you know, to the Lagos Plan of Action, for instance, if you look at the Abuja Treaty, the Sirte Declaration, and what we have now, Agenda 2063, we've been weaving our way up until this moment. So we're determined not only to learn better, but to build better. So there's no doubt that South Africa has much to gain in terms of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We're going to tackle issues of trade, economic development, industrialization, diversification. We're hoping for substantial employment, and of course, so much more. So I'm hoping that all of you in this room will help make this event a success. We're looking for your interaction, your contributions to building higher and wider, these building blocks that we're talking about. So just before we get into the meat of the thing, let's talk about housekeeping matters. As you all know, telephones, please put them on silent. If not, step out, but make sure that it doesn't ring while we are in the midst of our conversations. Your masks, I know mine is off, but if you can, keep yours on throughout, unless you're eating, drinking, and of course, you are speaking here. And just to let you know that following the panel session, there's going to be a question and answer session as well, where we'll be asking you to contribute perhaps on what has already been said, but all you need to do is raise your hand. Please identify yourself, your organization, and of course I will note you to speak and will be provided with a roving microphone which will be given to you. Also, to make it easier for everyone, I know it's not so much easy to have lively conversations with all of this red tape, but please just address our speakers as Your Excellency or Your Excellencies as a collective, if you like, unless you are referring to somebody in particular, if you want to pose a question. And good news is lunch is supposed to be at 1 o'clock, but because we are running late, I'm going to try and make sure that it's delayed by 30 minutes. I don't know how the event organizers are going to feel about that, but I know the kitchen will be happy with me because they hate late lunches. So for my colleagues, journalists, by the way, if you have set up an appointment for an interview, please speak to the welcome desk. They'll help you with the interviews for our VIPs or anyone that you think you would like to engage with. There's also going to be, by the way, business sessions with individual members of African Bank. If you'd like to engage them, also go to the welcome desk. They'll be able to direct you, help you with making an appointment. Above all, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to urge you to please join us. 15 to 21 November, that's when the big event is. We're talking about the continent's game-changing premier trade and investment event, the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2021. So let me, without taking too much time, please call on the welcome speech by our guest. And a warm welcome to her, please, Mrs. Gwen Mwaba, who's a director and global head trade finance, African Export-Import Bank, African Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, please give her a rousing, warm welcome.
His Excellency Joseph Tsikitswane Mashimbe, South Africa Ambassador to Egypt, Mr. Kla Kanipo Nkotwana, Head of Department, Economic Development, Tourism and Environment Affairs, KZN, Ms. Leila Mukadam, Director General, Southern Africa, AFDB, captains of industry, CEOs, and representatives of the South African business community, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to this high-level roadshow on the Intra-African Trade Fair, IATF, which will take place in this renowned province for trade and culture. A province that is an industrial hub of South Africa. This high-level roadshow is being hosted under the theme Promoting South Africa and Africa Trade and Investment under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. As you are aware, IATF 2021 will hold in Durban, South Africa from 15th to 21st November 2021. This roadshow aims to empower the people and business community of South Africa with critical information about the IATF, its importance, its role in supporting the implementation of the AFCFTA, and also serves as a rallying call for the full participation of the South African public and private sector at the IATF 2021, which will take place, as I'd mentioned, in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Let me begin by setting the context in which we conceived and championed the Intra-African Trade Fair. In 2013, the heads of state and government adopted Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, as a blueprint for transforming the continent into an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. Among the first flagship projects under Agenda 2063 is the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area to stimulate intra-African trade and advance economic integration. The historic agreement establishing AFCFTA was signed in 2018, entered into force on 30th May 2019, and under which trading commenced on 1st January 2021. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is making history. The AFCFTA created the world's largest free trade area since the creation of the World Trade Organization by a number of participating states. United as a single market, the AFCFTA creates a market of around 1.3 billion people, combined GDP of over $3 trillion, making it the fifth largest economy globally in terms of GDP. The AFCFTA promises to revolutionize trade, reshape markets across the region, and boost output in the manufacturing and services sectors. It will fundamentally transform Africa's economic structure and significantly reduce Africa's reliance on the export of raw materials. In the context of post-COVID-19, the AFCFTA has probably taken on an even more important role as the framework for African economic recovery. According to the Secretary General of the AFCFTA Secretariat, Mr. Wamkele Mene, implementing the AFCFTA is the best stimulus for post-COVID-19 economies, as he rightly observes, and I quote, "Many African countries do not have the monetary policy space nor the fiscal policy space to provide large bailouts in the trillions of dollars for economic recovery. Therefore, for Africa, the stimulus package is the actual implementation of the AFCFTA. Increased intra-African trade is what will drive economic development post-COVID-19." End of quote. Indeed, we have also been reminded time and again by the President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Afreximbank, Professor Benedict Orama, the AFCFTA offers us the opportunity to shake off once and for all the shackles that have held us back, including 1, market fragmentation, 2, lack of economic scale, 3, reliance on the export of primary commodities, and 4, underdeveloped regional value chains, and lastly, tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade, the result of which has been a very low percentage of intra-African trade, averaging around 15%, and continually subjecting Africa's growth and development to external forces. At Afreximbank, guided by our medium-term strategy, which is dubbed Impact 2021 Africa Transformed, intra-African trade, industrialization and export development, and trade finance leadership have been the bank's main focus. The bank has rolled out a number of initiatives and products, and their objectives are to stimulate Africa's transformation. The bank is implementing a number of initiatives to support the AFCFTA, such as the Africa Trade Gateway, which is a digital super platform comprising of digital solutions such as the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, Know Your Customer Due Diligence Repository, which we call MANSA, Trade Information Portal, TIP, and the Trade Regulations Portal, TRIP. Others are the AFCFTA Adjustment Fund and the Africa Collaborative Transit Guarantee Scheme, the Export Trading Companies Initiative, a global facility for intra-champs, an automotive program, creative initiative, which we call CANEX, industrial parks and export processing zones, the Africa Quality Assurance Centers, Quality Infrastructure Program, the Africa Medical Center of Excellence, the South Africa Trade and Investment Program, SATIP, and the Afreximbank Guarantee Program, AFGAP, supply chain financing, and finally, the Intra-African Trade Fair, IATF, amongst others. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the largest economy in Southern Africa and the second largest in the continent, South Africa has a vital leadership role to promote intra-African trade and investments, and well suited for production and service distribution and the participation and contribution of the South African public and private sectors is key to the success of the AFCFTA. Afreximbank also seeks to be the go-to development partner as South Africa builds and sustains solid export manufacturing capacities and capabilities, as well as domestic and continental supply chains that facilitate increased flow of goods and services across borders in Africa. As South Africa implements its export diversification strategies and looks to expand its market across Africa under the AFCFTA, Afreximbank avails itself to support South Africa realize its full manufacturing and export potential, while ensuring that the produced goods and services are traded. Afreximbank has continued to support South Africa's corporate entities. Over the last 2 years, Afreximbank has provided financial support in excess of $168 million to South Africa through a range of interventions targeted at South Africa's private and public sector. The bank has established a strong and satisfactory relationship with a number of key institutions, such as the Export Credit Insurance Corporation of South Africa, Development Bank of South Africa, as well as leading commercial banks, and will continue to seek more ways to support projects in the country in line with the bank's developmental mandate. Afreximbank's current pipeline of transactions stands at more than $1.2 billion across the various key sectors of the South African economy. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the South African economy grew by 1.1% in the first quarter of 2021. The finance, mining, and trade industries were the main drivers of output on production on the supply side of the economy, while household spending and changes in inventories helped spur growth on the expenditure or demand side. Despite this being the third consecutive quarter of positive growth, the South African economy is 2.7% smaller than it was in the first quarter of 2020. In terms of direction of South Africa's trade in 2020, from the export side, none of the African countries were among the top 5 destinations for South African exports. China, the United States of America, Germany, the United Kingdom, and Japan. Similarly, none of the African countries were among the top 5 import countries for South Africa. These, once again, were dominated by China, Germany, the United States of America, India, and Saudi Arabia. This points to huge opportunities for South Africa and Africa trade. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with intra-African trade at very low levels, Afreximbank sees AFCFTA as a game-changing initiative that Africa so badly needed. Our goal being to reverse engineer the colonial strategy of drawing raw materials it needs, dumping its own manufacturers in return, economic policy being reduced to rudimentary procedures of gathering crops and bartering them, ensuring that countries do not trade with their neighbors. Therefore, we must ride on the AFCFTA and the collective will of our leaders and all of the African people. In this regard, to the foregoing, it is with regard to the foregoing that IATF plays a significant role in making intra-African trade a reality by providing a sustainable platform for buyers and sellers, investors and governments to connect, exchange trade, investment and market information, and conclude business deals. The trade fair brings together continental and global players to showcase and exhibit goods and services, explore business and investment opportunities across Africa. The importance of trade fairs in promoting intra-African trade was recognized as early as the 1980s in the Lagos Plan of Action, as well as the Abuja Treaty, which called for the adoption of the All-Africa Trade Fair of the OAU as an instrument of trade promotion. The Action Plan for Boosting Intra-African Trade, BIAT, that was endorsed by the AU Summit in 2012, also highlighted the lack of access to trade information as a key challenge affecting intra-African trade. The AU tried to organize the All-Africa Trade Fairs in the past, but this was not sustained. And as there was no financial institution back then to back the fairs, it was not possible to keep them sustainable. In 2018, and against all odds, in collaboration with the African Union and the government of Egypt, we were able to organize the inaugural Intra-African Trade Fair, dubbed IATF2018, to support the implementation of the AFCFTA. And it attracted over 2,500 conference delegates and over 1,000 exhibitors. We therefore call upon the Government of South Africa and private sector associations to provide support in terms of mobilizing South African businesses, including women in business and the SMEs, to participate in the IATF verticals, including exhibitions, business to business and business to government country day program, trade and investment forum, IATF virtual automotive forum, creative African Nexus program, the youth startup program, and also the Africa sub-regional conference. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to reiterate that as Afreximbank, we stand firm in our commitment to supporting intra-African trade and investment. And in so doing, we are ready to support the government of South Africa and the private sector to ensure that there are adequate resources, both financial and non-financial, in place, to not only adapt to a world of continued turbulence in the midst of COVID-19, but also thrive in the new business environment created by the AFCFTA. We look forward to seeing you all in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal in November 2021. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think she deserves another warm round of applause. Thank you very much, Mrs. Mwaba, for that substantive illustration of what Afreximbank is doing, and I'm glad that you spoke about the need for social and political changes, especially for marginalized communities. We can't speak about a new way that's been charted if we don't talk about especially women who are, besides the youth, have a considerable demographic weight when we talk about the importance of changing the way that we trade. Looking at the fact that we, as a continent, have declined in the number of intra-Africa exports. Between 2020, we stood at 23%, down to 11% from world exports. 11% of those were intra-Africa trade, and I believe that that was down from 17%. So we are indeed regressing. We're going to talk about some of the challenges with regards to the African Continental Free Trade Area, especially from a South African perspective, because this is a roadshow. We mentioned that we've been going from country to country. South Africa will be looking at the recovery time of our economy as well. The President of South Africa has recently spoken about that, and the headways that we're making, the innovation that we're inculcating into our policy changes with regards to COVID-19, including the ability to manufacture ourselves ventilators, which have been very pivotal instruments in saving people from this deathly disease. We'll be talking about the logistics. And of course, I think what is also important, we'll be talking about lessons that should be learned from the regional economic communities. I think all of you will agree that we can't talk about progress made or progress to be made in the various phases of the African Continental Free Trade Area if we aren't looking at the regional economic communities, what some of the successes are, what some of the failures are, and what we can build on. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing us to give you a sense of what Afreximbank is going to be doing. I'd like to now invite Mr. Nhlakanipho Nkotwana, the head of Department of KwaZulu-Natal Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, not only for a message of support, but a presentation on KwaZulu-Natal's readiness for this event, the International Africa Trade Fair 2021, as we mentioned, an exciting platform for all, including, we'll hear later on about the arts industries. So please allow me to call him up and give him a warm welcome as well.
Program Director, I'm sure whether I'm allowed to, may I take it off? Thank you. Program Director, Mr. Piso Magwetla, His Excellency Joseph Mchikwane Mashimbe, our Ambassador to Egypt, Mrs. Gwen Mwaba, the Director and the Global Head of Trade and Finance at Afreximbank, Ms. Leila Mukadem, the Director General Southern Africa, African Development Bank of South Africa, the MMC of Finance with us from the city of Johannesburg, the biggest city, the leading city in this country, and Dr. Precious Moloi Motsepe, the founder of African Fashion International Johannesburg in absentia, our esteemed panelists, members of the media, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It gives us a pleasure to be part of this August platform here in Johannesburg, in Gauteng, where we're discussing intracontinental trade opportunities that will come with it. And this conversation today is a critical milestone in building towards South Africa hosting the successful second Intra-African Trade Fair 2021, which will be held in Durban on the 15th to the 21st of November. As we look ahead to November, we are inspired by the conference theme, which is Building Bridges for Successful IATF2021. But program director, before we build, we need to clear the ground. Sometimes even break down and clear out elements that could potentially hinder our building program to build a strong foundation that will anchor an unwavering intracontinental trade that will be a base for the Africa we want, the Africa that characterized by free flowing of goods and services between our countries. We need to break down certain barriers. We must destroy the artificial boundaries created during colonial era that created compartmentalized Africa that sees itself as individual countries and not as a continent. A common market of over 1.2 billion people with combined GDP of over 3.3 trillion US dollars. With that, we need to urgently repackage many of our inward-looking policies that are hindering free inter-trade. We must break down the barriers of access to trade and market information and move faster to build a system that will connect buyers and sellers from across the continent. We cannot be the biggest common market in the world, yet we lag behind other regions of the world in terms of continental trade. Our intra-trade exports amounts only 16.6% of the total trade, and this needs to change. Ladies and gentlemen, some 4 weeks ago, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Honorable Sihle Zigarala, sent us to Ghana, Accra, to deliver a clear message to the IATF Ghana Roadshow that KwaZulu-Natal is open for business. We repeated this message in Kenya 2 weeks ago. We assured delegates that, in fact, we never closed. The social unrest that saw business looted and property destroyed was just a painful moment in our history that was temporary, led by Honorable Premier, supported by strong resilience of our systems and our people. We are working hard to rebuild our economy, image, and confidence. It is for this reason that together with our parties like DTIC, the Department of Small Business and Development, and other state agencies, we are currently embarking on roadshows in the province where we are conducting honest engagements with businesses that were adversely affected by the unrest. And together we are discussing ways to rebuild our economy. Part of this conversation is also to provide support to those companies that could not access the support packages that have been designed by government. The impact of the recent social unrest on our economy is estimated at 13.5 billion rand, costing approximately 40,000 jobs and over 3,000 companies affected. And according to SASRA information, the claims from the KZN amount to 15.4 billion rands. And the province is working closely with SASRA in processing these claims. Our rebuilding exercise is indeed gaining momentum. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you that KwaZulu-Natal is a stable and safe province to do business. To underscore this point, one of the biggest mineral producers, Rio Tinto, resumed operations at Richards Bay Minerals last month following the stabilization of security around the mine, supported by the national and provincial government, as well as substantive engagement with host communities and their traditional authorities. This demonstrates our collective resolve to address our problems. As we always say, together we stand, divided we fall. It is humbling to announce that the Beans fraternity in the province has committed itself to continue investing. They have pledged to reinvest and embark on extensive expansion programs. One such company is the world-leading producer of coated fine paper, SAPI, which has announced that it will be unveiling its expansion program shortly. In fact, by the time we host this event in Durban, this is one of the expansion programs that we would have witnessed. This demonstrates that we are in government at work, and our economy rebuilding exercise has gained traction. The vaccination drive has gained momentum as well. This past Friday, Premier Zigalala launched a vaccination drive-through campaign in King Cetshwayo District Municipality in Richards Bay. The Richards Bay is where the Afreximbank Bank has heavily invested at Nyanza Light Metals, which is a chemical manufacturing company. This company that has started the construction of its titanium dioxide pigment production plant at the Richards Bay Industrial Development Zone. The investment is at the margin of 4.5 billion, and the project will be rolled out in 3 phases. As far as the aviation and tourism is concerned, we are pleased to report to your good selves that the aviation sector is getting back to full operation. The long haul in and out of Durban operated by the Emirates and Qatar Airways have resumed, while Mauritius will be open for South African travelers from the 1st of October this year. This will make it easier for you ladies and gentlemen to fly directly into and out of Durban for the conference in November. Locally, the likes of British Airways, Kulula, Fly SF Air are up in the sky. Our aerotropolis is indeed buzzing. We are looking forward to SAA taking to the skies and flying the nation flag once again next week, Thursday, on the 23rd of September, when the national carrier will resume operations to destinations like Johannesburg, where we are today, Cape Town, Accra, Kinshasa, Harare, Lusaka, Maputo, which will make connectivity to Durban much easier. We are a tourism destination, I must say. Our warm beaches are welcoming. So is the Drakensberg Mountains and the melting pot of our diverse culture. We are focusing on sport tourism, and we have just witnessed an exciting COSAFA Cup tournament hosted in Durban recently. And early in November this year, we'll be hosting the beach football tournament. And South African Tourism will host Africa Travel and Tourism Summit under the theme Reawakening Africa. The IATF will be held as a hybrid event in 5 cities in Africa, including Durban, Johannesburg, Lagos, from the 19th to the 21st of September this year. Distinguished guests, we are aligned to the IATF verticals, and one of the key components of this conference is the automotive sector. And as a province, we pride ourselves with the biggest automotive producer being Toyota, which is in the process of establishing the original equipment manufacturers in the south of Durban, aimed at promoting localization. As a province, we're also supporting the film industry, which aligns well with one of the strategic verticals of this event, which is KNEX. Furthermore, we have just opened the 2nd phase of the Youth Development Fund to promote businesses that are led by young women, young people especially women in the province. Some of these entrepreneurs will be participating in the event in December. Our message to Gauteng, we want to say to the people of this province and the Beans fraternity is that we are partners in this exciting journey. Our message to you is that we are together. Rikaufela, sisonke in this. We call upon the government of the province and the business sector at large to be with us as we make history. Hosting this event is the envy of every nation, and we are humbled by the confidence shown by the organizers of this event in us. The kingdom is calling. The waves are calm. The sea breeze is welcoming. See you there. Asante sana, merci beaucoup. Medisi, Rialeboha. Thank you.
A very warm round of applause, please, for Mr. Nkotwana. And we look forward to the visit, and we hope that you personally will be hosting us. I hear His Excellency Mashimbe here saying that you didn't mention that there are sharks. Whether they're proverbial sharks, I'm not quite sure. But I suppose that's something that we'll be discussing later on. And we are really encouraged about the progress that you've made, about the efforts South Africa, not only South Africa, but KwaZulu-Natal has made in regional integration. But I must say, I think you also touched on the important issues that of existential issues, namely some of which we know the elephant in the room in South Africa, which we've experienced recently, is peace and security issues, which I think continent-wide is something that we all will have to deal with at some point. And it's one thing talking about regional integration, but it's another if we're not looking to correct what is foundationally wrong with our democracies, and that is issues of inequality. So while we talk about economic competitiveness, we need to ensure that we upgrade social and political institutions in order to reduce poverty, to reduce inequality, in order to ensure that regional integration is a success and it serves its purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to now invite our next speaker, His Excellency Joseph Nsikwana Mashimbe, South African Ambassador to Egypt. You would know that South Africa is amongst the first to put in legal instruments to facilitate the African Continental Free Trade Area. Ghana is one of those, and so is Egypt. So it will be very encouraging to hear how the African Continental Free Trade Area is already working to facilitate good relations and improve trade between these two countries. Please give him a warm round of applause as he stands up.
Tsepiso Makwetla ke a leboga. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Mwaba, Ubabu Nhlakanipo, and other invited guests, very important guests from the public and private sector. Thank you very much for inviting me to this second installment of the IATF. I was previously posted as ambassador to Brazil. Before that, I was posted to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. When I was first posted to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I asked myself a question: why the DRC? I'm sure there are other exotic places to be sent to. And, you know, I could be sent, I don't know, Mauritius maybe, Paris maybe. And I thought I must have done something very wrong. But when I got to the DRC, I realized that I was being given a very Pan-Africanist mission. Pan-Africanist mission because all the beautiful things that we say that we want to do in the continent, you can't achieve them if you don't get to do the practical things. The first one being silencing the guns. It's a requisite for development. The second one was, how dare we talk economic development when you don't have basic number one, which is the requisite energy to industrialize. So I saw it as a great opportunity to be placed in the Congo, because we've been talking about a project since the 60s to use the great or the mighty Congo River, hydroelectrical power generation of the mighty Congo River, to power Africa and use some of that energy or sell some of that energy to Southern Europe. So I felt better about that, and after that I was sent to Brazil. I've never gotten many sympathies when I tell people I was also sent to Brazil, because people imagined caipirinhas and so on. So I won't dwell much into that. I was then sent to Egypt. I will talk about later in my conversation with you. Having spoken after Madam Waba and Ubaba Nhlakanipo, I had to ask myself the question, what is this thing that we are doing here? I decided to locate it in the mission of our forebears. I think our forebears have successfully fulfilled their generational mission. Their mission was to eradicate all forms of colonialism and racial tyranny. That was their mission. And I believe that that historical mission has been accomplished. You will remember the great Pan-Africanist philosopher Frantz Fanon. He correctly taught us something. He's the famous author of the Wretched of the Earth. He taught us, and I quote, each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it in relative opacity, close quotes. So what is our mission? Because our forebears have fulfilled their mission. Our mission is the attainment of the goals of Agenda 2063. That agenda is a clear strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of the continent within a 50-year period, from 2013 to 2063. It is our continent's blueprint and master plan for transforming our continent into the global powerhouse of the future. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to congratulate Afreximbank, led by Dr. Orama, the African Union, and more importantly, the Secretariat for the African Free Trade Area, Mr. Wamkele Mene, and all the stakeholders. I want to congratulate them for this second installment of the Intra-African Trade Fair, which in my view is a testament that our continent has a crop of leaders and activists with the appropriate caliber, requisite skills, and the tenacity to shoulder the mission of our generation to a successful conclusion. As an individual Pan-Africanist, I've always tried to locate myself within the general mission of my generation. As I said earlier, when I was entrusted with representing South Africa in the Congo, I decided that of the many things that an ambassador does, I focused on only one matter, that is the realization of the Inga Dam, the hydroelectrical power generation. a requisite for our continent's industrialization. It has started, it's going well, but it needs a champion. And I believe South Africa is that champion. I'm now in Egypt, and of the many things I'm supposed to do, my one and only focus is the realization of the Cape to Cairo road. I don't see how you successfully implement the intra-African trade without a road. I think we need to start there. It's not the only road, of course. You would need it in the east, in the west, but between Cape to Cairo, this is an old conversation. Efforts have been taken. There have been many successes, but there are bottlenecks. And I think South Africa and Egypt must play a role of debottlenecking some of those issues. This is my personal contribution to this all-important venture of our generation's mission. The question is whether you're in the private sector or public sector, what is yours? That one is mine. One of the things that I'm trying to do as a representative of South Africa in Egypt is I've asked the American University of Cairo, I've asked Afrexim Bank as well, to help me answer the question, what is it that Egypt imports from elsewhere, Europe and the Americas, that can be imported from South Africa, and vice versa? Because when we answer those questions, then we are giving ammunition, we're giving an armory to our entrepreneurs to engage in intra-trade. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. And I would like us to please give him another warm round of applause. And I must tell you, Excellency, that the DRC has many exotic things. The best French restaurant on a tree is to be found in Kinshasa. I don't know if you know about that little corner of the world. So I must say, my first introduction of the deeper rural parts of the DRC was at an airport where literally the stop sign was a tree. And for the first time, I understood why Africans clap as soon as an airplane lands, because we stopped right in front of the tree. So development is something that is of the essence. And we know that the North African countries, including Egypt, account for a substantial amount in terms of imports and exports of the automotive industry, of which we are working on in terms of partnerships and strengthening them. So for those of you who like your luxury cars, your BMWs, your Mercedes-Benz, Egypt may be the next stop to helping us get those assimilated at a cheaper price. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to then introduce to you our next speaker, and I'm very proud to do so. I would like you to please allow me to call up to the stage Ms. Leila Mokadem, who's going to tell us a little bit more about our role in terms of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, but most importantly, perhaps let me not take too much time of what you're going to say. Let me just please call her up onto the stage. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. So my name is Leila Mokadem. I just arrived in South Africa as Director General Southern Africa of the African Development Bank. And Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me to the IATF 2021 Roadshow. Since the first edition of the Intra-African Trade Fair held in Cairo in 2018, the African Development Bank has been and continues to be a proud collaborating partner and sponsor of this event, together with Afrexim Bank, the African Union, and other partners. We are very excited that the IATF for this year, 2021, will be held within the borders of South Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area will certainly create the largest free trade area in the world. If successfully implemented, it will have the largest potential to boost regional trade and regional integration, especially for landlocked and low-income countries. As a key deliverable of the AFCFTA, the Intra-African Trade Fair is appropriately designed as an auspicious Pan-African mobilization forum. Hosting the IATF 2021 in South Africa is therefore timely. As a regional hub and Africa's most diversified economy, South Africa has a bigger role to play in showing political and policy leadership to ensure that the benefits of the AFCFTA accrue both to its citizens and to the rest of the region. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to reach full benefits from AFCFTA, Africa needs to aggressively boost industrialization. And Your Excellency, you have talked about infrastructure, about regional renewable energy, you have talked about roads and corridors, but research by the African Development Bank indicates that Africa is less industrialized today than it was 3 decades ago. Yet, this manufacturing deficit could be satisfied within the continent and enabled by the implementation of the AFCFTA. This presents huge opportunities for regional hubs with an already established infrastructure base like South Africa to boost their manufacturing volume, their trade volumes by fulfilling the supply of value-added products to the rest of the continent. And the example of South Africa, Egypt, where I was posted a few years ago, is really a good one. The African Development Bank remains ready to support South Africa in ensuring that it leverages the AFCFTA both from its sovereign and non-sovereign financing windows to integrate Africa and improve the standard of living of the African people. In addition, the African Development Bank continues to engage in the AFCFTA through active participation in the Continental Task Force on the CFTA. The task force has oversight mandate for the CFTA implementation process, where the strategies, work programs, and the negotiations and related agenda are developed and designed, including participation in the negotiation processes. The African Development Bank is also supporting the development of an AFCFTA country business index, financing and development of trade facilitation regional infrastructure within a solid pipeline of regional infrastructure and public goods, and scaling trade finance interventions, which are in line with AFCFTA agenda by deploying a variety of financing and risk mitigation instruments. In fact, since 2013, our trade finance program has so far supported more than 12 billion of US dollars of cumulative trade value. I wish this roadshow and this event a full success in preparation of the IATF 2021 edition, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all and more in Durban in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please give Ms. Mokadem another round of applause. And I know that she might just smack me for saying this, but we're going to lean on a lot of your experience and your counsel on especially the conceptual aspects of integration from the African Development Bank and how we can avoid having a linear approach to trade liberalization in order to have healthy competition between the countries, because ultimately this is what we want. We want to be competitive, but also in a fair manner, and understanding some of the integration constraints as seen by the African Development Bank. Thank you very much. So let's then now take a minute. I'm sure you're tired of looking at me and my third leg. Let's cast our eye to the video. We're going to show you two videos that are going to give you a sense of what's to come next in terms of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair and some of the components. So if I could just ask the team to please beam us up.
Wouldn't you like to explore a country where two worlds intersect, where first world infrastructure meets an emerging market, where science and technology enjoy rapid advancement, a land where innovation creates a dynamic environment for growth, where a market of almost 60 million people provide you with the perfect springboard to access a continent of 1.3 billion people? Welcome to the future. Invest in South Africa.
KwaZulu-Natal is an enticing, sophisticated, and spectacular destination. As one of South Africa's 9 provinces, it is the country's second largest economy. The ambitious future growth of the province lies primarily in its positioning as the gateway to Africa. Nowhere else in the continent is the combination of sea, land and air logistics being more developed and optimized as it is in KwaZulu-Natal. The province boasts 2 of the largest seaports in sub-Saharan Africa. Durban Container Terminal, which has recently been widened and deepened, and Richards Bay Harbour, the country's busiest deep-water and break bulk port and home to the privately operated Richards Bay Coal Terminal. Both ports are backed by a world-class rail and road infrastructure, giving KwaZulu-Natal a key competitive advantage. The N2 is an important corridor connecting Durban and Richards Bay, and the N3 links Durban with a double-lane artery to the bustling capital of Gauteng. When it comes to fast, agile access to global markets, King Shaka International Airport is Southern Africa's premier air logistics platform. Situated at the Dubai Trade Port, this area truly prioritizes integrated air services. The province has the second highest export propensity as well as the second highest level of industrialization in the country. Toyota South Africa, the country's largest vehicle manufacturer, is located in the province, as are several major national suppliers. The ship repair, shipbuilding and boat building industries also have a long and proud history in Durban. The province's chemical and plastic subsector is well established, versatile and diversified. Minerals and mining are key industries in the northern areas. KwaZulu-Natal's agricultural sector boasts a wide diversity of high-quality agricultural land, and it is the country's leading producer of timber and manufacturer of timber products. KwaZulu-Natal is also striving to be a strong ICT and electronics contributor. To ensure growth and development of its wide variety of sectors, special economic zones have been identified as a conduit for economic growth. With its subtropical climate and breathtaking settings, KwaZulu-Natal is South Africa's domestic tourism leader. From its metropolitan heart in Durban, you will never be more than 3 hours away from the pristine beaches of the south, the majestic Drakensberg to the west, or the Isimangaliso Wetland Park in the north. As a place to live and work, KwaZulu-Natal offers world-class infrastructure and excellent medical, educational, social and cultural facilities. A skilled and semi-skilled labor pool also ensures that current and budding enterprises will have the right people readily available. With so many opportunities at hand, there's never been a better time to unlock the potential of KwaZulu-Natal. Trade and Investment KwaZulu-Natal, your knowledge partner in business.
No doubt after viewing that, you are looking forward to Durban in November, yes? Really? Oh, that's it. Jovita says, Ambassador, indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a couple of minutes to get a photo opportunity for the speakers, the panelists. I'm going to invite you up on stage. And we're going to take a comfort break as well, so please stretch your legs. I'm just waiting for an indication. Okay, we've got 30 minutes, so don't stray too far. Please get yourself a cup of coffee or whatever they're serving so that you can have energy for the next session. Just a sneak preview at some of the things that we'll be looking at. It was already mentioned, transport and power supply infrastructure gaps, including policy gaps as well. We'll be looking at the removal of non-tariff trade barriers. We'll be talking about enhanced market information. We'll also be looking at value-added processing within Africa, which is a big thing as well. Tailored marketing, intellectual property frameworks, that was also spoken about. Mobilizing finance, more engagement at community level, which I think is important. For me personally, how we're going to affect all of these big dreams outside of the net of corruption, because I think, which is a lot of what of our people worry about, how are we going to circumvent that? So for the speakers and those who are going to be on the panel, I'd like to invite you to come up for your photo opportunity. Those of you who'd like to step outside for a minute, coffee break, whatever, please do so. You have 30 minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could just please wrap up whatever you're doing. We've got another 5 minutes before we start our next session. If you're outside and you can hear me, please know that we have 5 minutes to wrap up whatever we're doing to come back into the room for the next session. Thank you. That's okay with you? Okay, so I think we should begin now. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had the pleasure of listening to and gaining from the insight. Okay, I'll just, if we can just please indulge me so that we can continue with the program. We did start rather late, and I'd like us to wrap up within good time. Okay, so as I said, we had the pleasure, the honor of hearing from some of our premier and expert speakers on a range of issues with regards to the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, the plans according to the bedrock of a theme, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area, on formative topics such as KwaZulu-Natal. We heard what happened in Kenya. We heard about experiences of Egypt. We heard from the African Development Bank as well. And finance, trade, investment, government policies, and export facilitation, what has been done. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment in our panel discussion, but I'd ask you to please to take a minute to watch this video. There'll be some exciting things happening in Durban. As I mentioned, the arts industry. Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe, as you know, is the founder of African Fashion International Johannesburg. And here's a little video that's been compiled to give you a sense of what they're bringing to the table.
A5 Fast Track is a national platform offered to fashion design graduates. Emerging designers are introduced to the business of fashion through a range of opportunities presented through its affiliation with A5's various marketing and event platforms. 5 young designers are selected to showcase their capsule collections at A5's lifestyle events. Following a process of mentorship, the winner is awarded the title of Young Designer of the Year, as well as a cash prize to invest in growing their brand. Here are the 2021 Fast Track finalists.
So I would say that my definition of a power look is a garment or a look that makes you feel powerful.
A definition of a power look is something I believe it needs to make a woman feel confident. I always think that pushing the boundaries is what confidence is.
My definition of a power look is a look put together with thought and time, that when worn evokes the emotion of strength and beauty.
The inspiration behind my garment was driven by comfort, quality, and affordability.
The inspiration behind the garment that I created, I wanted to install power into women in the corporate world. They're always seen as inferior against the man, and with this suit, it's almost like a piece of armor.
I'm inspired by a host of strong women. My designs, they tell a story of rising from the ashes. My ancestors were indentured laborers who fought against poverty, racism, and patriarchy. The women were and are the backbone of our family.
I think we need to, as a society, be listening to women more, and we need to be given space to be that isn't just encompassed in 1 month. Women's Month needs to be longer than a month, and we need to start acknowledging the importance and power of women in every day and in every way.
For more information about the Fast Track program, visit africanfashioninternational.com.
Okay, so that's some of the exciting things coming forward in Durban. But now let's get into the crux of the matter, the grit of what we've been talking about. We'll be looking at challenges, but of course opportunities we're looking at exporters, we're looking at investors, we're also looking at various other entities, including manufacturers. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our esteemed panel. It's an exciting panel, you'll see. On my left is Ms. Boitumelo Mosako, who's the Chief Financial Officer of DBSA. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Chabi.
And we're also joined by Mr. Muzwetu Matema, who's the Group Executive Macro Business Intelligence. He's also Chief Economist at the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. And Mr. Humphrey Wugo, who is the Regional Chief Operating Officer for Southern Africa at the African Import Bank, Afrexim Bank. A very warm welcome to you all. Let's give them a warm round of applause. We're going to egg them on because we're going to have a vibrant discussion. Okay, perhaps let's just first start with the easy one, and I'm going to give each one of you a minute each to just talk about the opportunities from the prism of your own organization, for these entities that we spoke about. We spoke about manufacturers, we spoke about exporters, and also investors. I'd like to hear from you in a minute where you think what we should be zeroing in on. Let me start with you.
Thank you, Tepi. You know, me representing the Development Bank of Southern Africa, which is mainly an infrastructure bank, you know, that focuses on ICT, energy, transport, health, and education. You know, for the trade agreement to be successful, a key enabler is infrastructure. You know, one actually has to be, you know, able to move the goods across the different countries. So as the DBSA, the opportunity we see is how we play a role in creating that connected Africa, you know, and that then entails, you know, from an infrastructure development program, we then need to be looking at roads programs. We need to be looking at energy programs, and in addition to that, you know, ICT as well. Even though it's a well-funded sector, it is going to be quite critical for us. I mean, energy security is so key, and we know the challenges that we have been facing in our own country, and I think in other African countries it's even, you know, a little bit more worse than South Africa. So I really think what's going to be key is us as development finance institutions across Africa, you know, creating that enabling environment for the private sector to also, you know, participate in closing the infrastructure gap to enable the success of this trade agreement.
Muzwetu, let me pass on the baton to you and ask this question. Given what Boitumelo has already outlined, we spoke about inequality, especially when we come to infrastructure development in South Africa as a whole. We'll look at Gauteng, for instance, and then compared to other areas which may be considered rural. How do we achieve equity and bring everybody along? Where do the opportunities lie, especially for your organization?
Thank you, Tsepi. I think firstly, let me be mischievous and start by first introducing what it is that our organization does, then I can answer the question. So we are an investment promotion and economic development agency operating at a provincial level. So our role is basically twofold. Firstly, to make sure that we are assisting companies investing in Gauteng and enterprises that are based in Gauteng, expanding the Gauteng trade footprint. But we also play a very deliberate role in making sure that we are rolling out economic infrastructure in the various programs of provincial government. Of course, it's a privilege to be able to carry out that mandate in a province that is endowed as Gauteng. However, at the heart of what it is that we're doing as provincial government from an economic development perspective is really driving inclusive industrialization. That means each of our programs that we do, both at the government level and at the agency level, are trying to undo the iniquity of the past. In the interest of time, maybe I can pause there, and I hope I can expand on that later. But in the interest of intra-Africa trade, everything that we do is focused around crowding in big businesses as a gateway to the continent, but also making sure that we crowd in small SMMEs into the continent. And we do that in very pragmatic ways, which I'd like to be given an opportunity to expand. But we also do that being cognizant of the fact that in Gauteng, in Africa, in South Africa, real growth and real labor intensity is not going to come from your large corporations being embedded, but it's going to come from any inclusive industrialization agenda, which is SMME driven. Thank you.
Okay. So then let's look at it from the perspective of African Bank, the work that you've done, Humphrey. And I'd like to take on from that issue of inclusivity in terms of integration, conception, looking back at where we've been. You know, if we look at I mentioned the regional economic communities earlier on, they've all not performed, I think, as we would have liked, and unequally as well. I think if we look at East Africa, some would say it has performed better in some cases than West Africa or even the SADC region. So how do we achieve that synergy in terms of the policy design and I think keeping everybody to the ideals, to the objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think it's important for us to contextualize where South Africa is in the broader scheme of things today, and therefore what the outlook would be. I think you were saying earlier on that 27% of total South Africa's exports as of 2020 was to Africa. The imports was about 17%. So what that says is South Africa continues to enjoy trade surplus with other African countries. And I also came across another statistics that suggested that in 1994, total size of South Africa's trade with the rest of Africa was about 9 billion rand. In 2019, that amount was 340 billion. So irrespective of the benefit that we all are aware of, that Africa Continental Free Trade area will bring, South Africa continues to power. 25% of total intra-Africa's trade is between South Africa and the rest of Africa. So that is a quarter of total Africa's trade. So it means, therefore, that for South African manufacturers, potential exporters, the coming on stream of Africa Continental Free Trade area presents huge opportunities for them. 1.2 billion people, over 3 trillion in market size. So they need to position themselves appropriately to take advantage of this opportunity. Specifically on how the separate economic communities are performed. Of course, yes, it's been a mixed bag, and we think that the reason African Continental Free Trade Agreement, or area if you call it, is a landmark development for Africa is because the regional economic communities were focusing on their own region. Of the top 10 export destinations for South African exporters, 9 of them are SADC countries. So that just tells you what we're talking about. Only Nigeria is outside of the SADC, and it's because of oil. So AFCFTA suddenly makes it possible for companies in South Africa to look beyond the SADC, their immediate neighbors, their immediate environment. And the idea is to bring together the regional economic corporations, the ECOWAS, the EAC, and all that, into some kind of an supranational umbrella, which is what AFCFTA represents. So I think it is a huge opportunity for them.
Mm. So Humphrey, let me just stay with you then and talk about this linear trade liberalization because of, we've seen growing isolationism in the world, and COVID-19 has also brought about a nationalistic approach on some of these issues. What do you then see as a challenge? And I'm talking here not only in terms of the integration constraints, but also the institutional infrastructure.
You see, from our view, trade liberalization in and of itself is not enough to spur trade expansion. Mm-hmm. You need trade facilitation. The AFCFTA helps with, removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers. But at the back of that, you may know that you can ship your goods to Nigeria, for instance, from here. But the fact is, how do you get it? How do you get the goods to Nigeria? Mm-hmm. So it's the facilitation aspect that we think that African policymakers, private sector leaders need to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. The facilitation. And that's where we come in as Afreximbank. As we go along, I would explain to you how we have made deliberate decisions to tackle some of these challenges that we found outside of tariff and non-tariff barriers, which we think AFCFTA is very well positioned to deal with. Obviously, those are actions by state actors that, to protect, obviously, their own industries and all that. But beyond that, there are issues about payment, there are issues about infrastructure, there are issues about logistics, there are issues about even certifications, right? If, I want to import, let's say, a processed food. I'm a South African, I want to import processed food from Zimbabwe. How would I trust the quality of the goods that I'm importing from there? Mm-hmm. So those are things that AFCFTA, in their current configuration, is not focusing on. And that's why partnerships with entities like ourselves now become very, very relevant. And we have specific solutions to some of those specific challenges that we have identified that are affecting the ability of Africa to trade amongst itself, irrespective of what AFCFTA is going to do. And we are working very closely with the AFCFTA in that regard.
But Dumela, how do you answer some of these questions in terms of possible solutions? And I'd also like to reflect on a particular example when we talk about financial facilitation, the collapse of the East Africa community, for instance. I think that was 1977. Mm-hmm. Some of those failures have been highlighted as a possible risk for how we facilitate the African continental free trade area.
I think what we really need to be focusing on, Tsepi, is what the opportunities that the Africa trade actually, actually brings. And just as much as we have a history, it's a history that we can learn from. Mm. And I think what's going to be, important as we move forward, with the implementation of the free trade, agreement, is to enable. I think what's going to be key is enable collaboration between governments and the private sector in the respective countries, and that's going to, entail policy, certainty, and also, what the gentleman, touched on is managing issues around foreign exchange as well. And I think that's one of the key challenges that we find on the continent, where on the continent we borrow in hard currency, but yet when it comes to the economies, it's in local currency. And it just creates that that disparity that ends up, where we end up, finding ourselves things being a little bit more expensive.
Which is the thing, because the long-term goal is that we are eventually going to have one currency. But we're working in phases here. So how do we, circumvent some of those issues? What kind of specialized programs we need to put in place to ensure those?
I think what we need to do as a start from a special programs perspective is to have the programs around infrastructure. That's my speciality, being a development, finance institution, to then say, what infrastructure programs are we going to put in place to enable this, across the regions, whether it's in East Africa, West Africa, and the regional integration, so that is going to be quite key. In addition to that, what is going to be important is every country has their speciality, in terms of what they can offer from a trade perspective. And I think it's going to be important to then say, how do we enable that trade to happen between different countries? I mean, I'm of the view that all Africa needs, Africa has. We actually do not need to be looking, outside to actually, be self-sustaining as a continent. And I think it's going to be important that as we roll this out, we really focus on Africa, and really not bother ourselves about, how is it going to impact, everyone else, outside of Africa, but for us to really focus on making it work for us. And I think it's going to, and another thing as well is, you touched on inclusion. Africa has, a large number of rural economies. And what's going to be critical is how to integrate those rural economies, into this whole, because we do not want lost opportunities, right? Where the focus is, is especially around the industrialization agenda. It's about how to actually create those, industries in rural economies and have the necessary infrastructure for the goods to move, from those communities into the cities, out of the countries, into other countries as well. And it has to be a deliberate plan.
So, Muzi, what then is your organization doing to this effect? And I want you to use, Gauteng as a microcosm of what we are working towards, and especially focusing on the SMMEs that you mentioned earlier on.
Thanks, Debbie. I think both Humphrey and Boitumelo carry a financial hammer, so their points and their intervention towards trade facilitation is based on offering some portfolio of financial instruments to assist that. I carry a different hammer, which is a relational hammer, and we have a very different role that we play in assisting Gauteng enterprises with trade facilitation. Very pragmatic, very simple. So currently, we, through our equivalent agency in Ghana, so we identify agencies that do what we do across the continent. We are currently basically assisting specific Gauteng-based enterprises in specific sectors that are deficit in Ghana to move into there. And the reason why we do that is quite simple. Yes, there's the availability of funding, the availability of all these complex trade barriers, but at the heart of it, when an enterprise lives here, they want to be able to arrive at any place in Africa and interact with an agency that they feel gives them the comfort to move ahead with doing business there, provides them with all the necessary information, and provides them with all the necessary non-financial issues that are required to set up a business, whether it's land, whether it's the relationship equity that you need there, whether it's basically access to government incentives. So that's the non-tariff barrier market failure that we unlock as the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. We've actually assisted over 700 enterprises to do that. Gauteng-based enterprises expanding into the continent. But what's important is we do this cognizant, firstly, of the fact that 95% of all our trade as Gauteng is only with 10 countries. So we are quite deliberate and aggressive in making sure that we're trading more than 10 countries. Most importantly, we're trading more than just raw materials. We're trading value-added goods. But in order to make sure that we're bringing the SMME along, we actually run an export development program where, and this is not only limited to Africa, but throughout every country that we deem as a critical trade or a potential trade partner, where we basically facilitate Gauteng-based SME enterprises with all the various elements that you would require to basically access that market. Just recently, Zanele, who heads our trade desk, was facilitating over 70 enterprises to access the Sweden market in collaboration with Trade Open Sweden. We've done that with Ambassador Nziki in Brazil. And Ambassador Nziki, I'm going to beat the Egyptians in giving you that data you asked for. In the spirit of non-tariff barriers, you know how we work. But that's really is at the heart of what we do. But I think then, to answer your question, what is it that Gauteng is doing to basically drive inclusive industrialization, both locally and in the region? Firstly, there are various market failures that we all appreciate in our economy. The first and most important being, whenever an SMME comes to us, the first thing they're looking for is funding, right? So because we are not funders, what we do, as I said, we carry a relational tool. We are in the process as provincial government of agglomerating various development funders, including ZEPI's organization, including the Industrial Development Corporation, to use their pool of funding and our relational pool with these SMMEs that we vetted as quality SMMEs to bring them together and fund those. So some of the work that we are doing, for example, around the local township economy is we've put a significant amount of funding, approached the IDC and asked them to equal that or even do better than us in order to basically unlock what we are calling as a new deal for the township economy. We have some discussions as well with other development institutions where, based on what it is that the GGDA does, we do a lot of incubation and training of SMMEs across various sectors. For example, in Pretoria, one of our subsidiaries, the Innovation Hub, is very deliberate and focused in the innovation sectors. The AIDC DEPA in Pretoria is focused on basically incubating SMMEs in the auto space, and that's actually very tactical because we view the auto industry and mobility as a key driver of intra-Africa trade. So our thinking there is that the SMMEs that we incubate become basically future entrepreneurs in the continent.
So does that include skills and technical training as well?
Incubation, from how we define it as GGTA, is firmly focused on that. Skills and technical training. But over and above that, we also are in the process of basically incubating several special economic zones. At the height of COVID, you are aware the largest FDI in the past 5 years, which was the Ford Special Economic Zone, was basically opened in Tshwane, and we're a key component of that. We are working on another special economic zone in the western part of the Gauteng province, which is firmly focused on agro-processing and green energy, and at the heart exporting those products into the rest of the continent. We have another special economic zone which is based in the OR Tambo, which is also focused in expanding Gauteng goods and goods that are produced in Gauteng to the rest of the continent. And then moving on to what I would call the big spectrum of what it is that Gauteng is endowed with. Unlike other provinces, we have a very critical mass of global African-based businesses that are selling services in the rest of the continent, MTN, etc., etc. And with that comes a lot of bottlenecks around the visa regulations that either employees or critical skills that work in those entities are faced with. So in our one-stop shop, which is based in Sandton, we play the role of basically fast-tracking all those various regulatory bottlenecks that we have. So the toolkit that we provide as Gauteng Growth and Development Agency is vast and covers the full spectrum of what you'd call commerce in the spirit of inclusive commerce.
So I know we're supposed to have the question and answer session later, but I do think, I'm thinking a lot of you have a lot of questions and your minds are reeling, thinking of things that you'd like to pose to the panelists. But let me just ask one or two more questions. And if you do have a question, please let me know, indicate, so that we can bring you into the conversation. So that's not just me asking them questions where you might think those questions are not relevant to why you're here. Humphrey, competitive or harmful competitive practices is something that has been spoken about some of the challenges where we can create opportunities in terms of the African Continental Free Trade Area. As Afrexim Bank, what kind of conceptual conversations are you having around this, and what examples are there to provide on which way to go and which way not to go?
You said competitive what?
Harmful competitive practices.
Oh, okay. All right. I think, well, competition is good in a capitalist environment. So we encourage it, as a matter of fact. I mean, I think the field is as large as possible. But harmful, that is where the problem is. What we are doing is, first of all, there needs to be a reorientation. That for us to change the fundamentals of Africa's trade and development, we need to play fair. And part of that problem is that sometimes economic players do not always understand what is required elsewhere, especially if you're looking at cross-border trade. You have numerous regulations, policy issues, customs rules, and all that. And sometimes people tend to undercut each other. And if you heard when Gwen was speaking earlier on, we are setting up what we call trade regulatory portal as a bank, which is Pan-African in nature. So we bring up the material regulations in every country on the continent. We put them on a website. If you want to do business in any country, you just click and then you find out what you need in that country, what you need to do. So that way you are not overexposing yourself because of lack of information to people who are not fair players. But again, as I said, exploitation, if you remember your basic economics, I still do remember mine. I say exploitation is part of capitalism, right? So people try to exploit opportunities within the system. So sometimes they are not always fair, yeah, but you have to try to find ways of protecting yourself by arming yourself with the right types of information, and that's what we're trying to do.
Would the rules of origin argument then fall within that? Because there are people who've said it is very harmful that we're still dilly-dallying, having so many bilateral agreements on product lines, that we should actually be very decisive. You spoke about policy certainty earlier on. Is this not one of those?
It is, absolutely. But again, that's why I said perhaps we are living in very good times now with the AFCFTA. So they have taken that on board. That is the single most difficult principle that they are still negotiating with parties, rule of origin, right? Because some countries don't want their own countries to become then a dumping ground or a transit countries where you just import from somewhere and then you ship it through your country into another and then increase the price because you're not paying tariffs. So that is a very difficult rule of origin issue. AFCFTA still hasn't been able to finalize that today as we speak because of obviously people trying to protect themselves and all that. But again, South Africa does not need to negotiate that with Zimbabwe or with Botswana. There is now an institutional framework that has been saddled with the responsibility to negotiate rules of origin on behalf of member countries. And African countries have all signed up to the AFCFTA agreement. So, again, good times, I think. Still a bit of time to go, but we'll get there. We'll get to a situation where we are all signed up to single or harmonized rules and regulation in doing business in Africa.
But are you that optimistic? I mean, when we're talking about expansion, increasing integration with other African countries from an infrastructural perspective, and we know that at some point the arguments over rules of origin will fall into that. If we're shipping, for instance, whether it's the waters or the infrastructure that we're using, fish, what is the approach of the DBSA on this argument, and how are you navigating this expansion when we talk about integration and infrastructural expansion?
I think, you know, the way we will be navigating it is to actually make sure that first of all, when it comes to infrastructure projects, there's an element where one has to, you know, prepare the projects and de-risk the projects to enable for private sector participation. And I think at that level, when we actually planning and de-risking the project, it's actually going to be quite important to get the right agreements in place, the intergovernmental agreements in place that are obviously favorable for all parties, where, you know, in terms of if there's any, you know, tariffs that, you know, that have to be paid, you know, along the way, it is clearly stated. Because, you know, what is required is, like you said earlier, decisiveness and clarity. You know, that is you know, that is going to be quite important. And I really think, you know, now more than ever, it's really important for us to not play the politics, but really do what's in the interest of the people of the continent. And I think this agreement, you know, creates that opportunity, you know, for us to, you know, to refine all of these, you know, challenges that we've been faced with, and really, you know, implement solutions.
Okay. So we get to the customs regime alignment, because I know that's also a very important matter at a later stage. But we're taking questions. I noted the lady here wanted to ask a question. If I could please ask you all to introduce yourself, your name, your company, and if there's anybody in particular you'd like to direct your question to, please do so. And also remember, if you're enjoying the discussion, hashtag IATF, you can even take a selfie, post it, say this how much I'm enjoying the discussion. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Mesela Ntlapo. I am the CEO of the African Rail Industry Association. We represent a number of multinationals, including the likes of Gibela, Progress Rail, and Wabtec. We find it a little bit interesting that from the African Union perspective, particularly the aspiration number 6, where it says, an Africa whose development will be people-driven, relying on the potential offered by Africans, especially its women, youth, and caring for its children. And then it further says, in terms of goals, that Africa should take full responsibility for financing her development. And I suppose this is where African Bank comes from. But from the DBSA perspective, and looking at the SMME, myself as an export consultant and having had experience of doing DTIC mission with DBSA, our concern is that first, that the risk, or rather the evaluation of the risk on the continent, it shouldn't be the way that the bank is looking at it. The mandate is to develop the development of business in Africa. So we find that a little bit difficult. The SMMEs do not have a budget for the funding that DBSA actually offers. Whether it's infrastructure, and I hear everybody talking about roads, we need rail. to integrate this continent. There's no any other way except rail. For the GDDA, fantastic organization, and I'm reaching out to you that in terms of the President's Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, the statement made on the 15th of October 2020, he talks about opening up the market for greater private sector participation. And we have commissioned a study into the practical implementation of third-party access and position ourselves as implementing partners. We would love to work with you in terms of the things that we can do together, growing the manufacturing sector. We have not engaged with Gauteng government, but fortunately we were quite lucky to get in touch with the Premier of KZN. We've met with the HOD, very much cooperative, and we would like to have that relationship with you. On the African Bank side, we would like to have more understanding of how do we engage you. Where there are projects, what is it that we can do together? I'm an African through and through. I don't believe that business should only, or the manufacturing sector should only be based in South Africa. We have members and companies that they're willing to establish manufacturing facilities on the continent so that we are able to share our skills with our brothers and sisters on the continent. So that is quite key. How do we do that? We talk about the skills and technical. As an industry, we're growing our skills. Government doesn't know what we need. So it is our responsibility to do that. We can't put all the responsibilities on government. There are education, healthcare, and that we have to compete. So as an industry, we have taken upon ourselves to grow our own skills so that we can answer to the future and that we're preparing for. And yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sela. I think you've given us a lot of food for thought. That's why I'm glad I opened up for the discussion, because it really does bring home not only what your interests are, but to interact with what the audience is saying. Your Excellency, I think, Ambassador, you had put your hand up.
Thank you, Ostepi. Ms. Sela says I'm an African, so am I. The normal thing or the right thing to do is to always be optimistic. I beg your pardon if I might not sound too optimistic. I'd like to ask the questions, what are the ingredients for the African Continental Free Trade Area to succeed in terms of partnerships? Yes, it's a Pan-African thing. But the continent is also not an island. It's part of a globe. How do we position the success of this trade area to succeed geopolitically, in terms of globalization, all the ingredients? What are they? For instance, we might want to start, as the Singaporean says, with governance. This thing that we call good governance. Have we defined it? What is good governance? Is our definition of good governance a Eurocentric one? Who is very successful right now in Asia? And if they are successful, is their good governance ideal? Is that what we understand as good governance? Or maybe we should be looking for just enough good governance. We might need to answer that question. The second one is, how are we positioning ourselves globally? The United States used to be the champion for free trade agreements. It's not anymore. President Trump said, tear those things apart, move away from them. The biggest free trade partnership currently is not the African one, is the one led by China. What do? Do you ignore that? Or maybe you say, we need them to be our partners. In our own definition, not the way they define the relationship. You know, Africans, they like complaining when people define their relationships. They don't take time to define that relationship. I think it's a bad relationship now, China and Africa, but I think it's a relationship that you can ignore, but you need to define. Which other continents with free trade areas whom it is in their interest to partner with us? I think it's China and Europe. I wish it was the US, America as well, but currently that's not where they are. I'm sure in good time, you know, they will redo their thinking. I would want to understand who should we be partnering with? And what is the situation with regards to silencing the guns in the continent? A few days ago, we woke up and some other chap, some colonel as well, has taken over. Of course, there was a few press statements from the Africans. You know, it takes me back to that thing of good governance. But more importantly, what are these ingredients? Is it good governance? Is how we locate ourselves in and around globalization, and how we locate ourselves within geopolitics in terms of the existing free trade agreements and so on. What else do we need to do to make sure we succeed? Thanks, Osepi.
Thank you very much. Is there another question, one last question? Okay, to the gentleman there. Can I take, over there, can I take the three of you after we get responses from our panel? Is that okay? Fair enough? Okay, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name's Ryan Edwards and Craig Chamberlain here. We're partners of a company called Made in Africa. Basically what we do is it's an online e-commerce store. They connect businesses to businesses throughout the whole of Africa. Also bridging the gap on logistics and goods. So my question would be, is Africa digitally ready for digitalization? Obviously, as South Africans, there's a lot of good guys that have got really good ideas, but are we ready from a private to public sector integration point of view? Are the public entity or public departments, especially with different countries, are they going to be able to integrate with private entities such as ourselves to make sure that Africa does grow and does connect to one another? That's my question.
All right, thank you very much. So perhaps let's just start with Ryan's point. Who would you like to? Okay, you can go ahead, Muzi.
I think typically your question is structured as a yes or no type of response, but the answer is that maybe it's not yes. But what we do know is the fact that if there's one thing Africa has been good at in the last 20 years is using digital infrastructure to leapfrog its position in global commerce. But the question that you raise on digital infrastructure is also true for even other forms of infrastructure which are typically enablers of commerce, but we as a continent have not historically positioned ourselves. Where digital commerce is quite critical is it's much more easier to set up and leapfrog and position specific regions in the continent as centers of digital commerce that then enable that. So it's a journey that needs to be walked. I think it's quite exciting that we are discussing a free trade agreement at a time in global history where the Europeans have had 60 years to put it together, get it right, and the UK walks away. So we can learn from that, and we can learn from the various challenges that poses. But over and above digital commerce, if, say, for example, SMME A in Rwanda orders a good from SME B in Gauteng based on your product, they'll still have to walk through the issues of traditional infrastructure to get that good there. So digital commerce, unfortunately, cannot even cannot exist in isolation to the existing infrastructure gap, which is what I hope the two bankers next to me are mandated to unlock that issue. But my answer is, the answer is not yes, but it's definitely not no. But the platforms that you use, I mean, we at GTA also have similar platforms that we are working on to try and make sure that there is, particularly in a COVID world, that sort of virtual commerce that can happen. But there is a journey to be walked in terms of the readiness of the continent's digital infrastructure to facilitate that. Thanks.
Perhaps, Muzifa, while you're still there, you could respond to Ms. Silla's point about third-party access agreement, especially with regards to rail. I think the deadline is at end of this year. I'm not sure. Was it the end of September?
In the President's defense, he didn't say the 12 months from when.
Okay. So if you'd like to respond to that, she also spoke about SMMEs, I think, skills development, saying, government doesn't really know what is needed, so what direction would you then provide? And also businesses and manufacturing sector that it should expand beyond South Africa. So I think these are the points that you were making to Muzifa.
I can respond to that. So firstly, I think the most positive thing from what she said was the invitation for our agency and her organization to work together. So we are available to walk that journey and unlock whatever it is that we need to unlock to make it material. Then she raised two important questions. The first was around how government is not the best position to train, and she's correct. The particularly incubation and skills development that we do, particularly in our agency, was in response to a very specific sector and a very specific market failure that we identified in order to bring a very specific pool of investment to come in the auto sector. We did the same also in the innovation space. But in responding to that, we obviously don't have resources to do that level of technical skills incubation across every sector. However, broadly speaking, government then plays the role of making sure that it's responsible for education policy such that there is some sort of mechanism to carry people to a specific level of literacy and education such that organizations such as Nhlapo then absorb them into their various specific sector needs. I think I'll pause there particularly.
So, Msela, perhaps let me hand over the baton to you while we're still on that. Msela said we need rail. Government is spending huge amounts of money in improving that infrastructure. But one of the things that is noticeable, I mean, if you look at the woes faced by the Transport Department, especially with regards to PRASA, and in line with the net map ideal, for instance, we're still a long way towards achieving that transport infrastructure goal. And one of the things that I've also found interesting about NetMap, for instance, one of the things that it identifies is how the female population, which is the largest working force in this country, is disadvantaged by this transport infrastructure. So I'm wondering where the spending is going and how it's being ring-fenced to deal with some of those issues. I know that's not what Ms. Silla was saying, but I'm also throwing in some of my own concerns in that.
Yeah, some of the gender mainstreaming issues. I mean, I do agree with what she's saying around rail, and women are the ones that actually use, whether it's public transport, they use public transport mostly because they are the ones that have to travel with kids as well. I think what is going to be key that I'd like to highlight is that when we embark, because first of all, political will, and I know His Excellency has already mentioned these challenges. That how do we overcome some of these challenges? And I think what is going to be key is political will, and another thing as well is collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. And what that entails is, organizations like ourselves, as the development finance as a development finance institution, when these programs are put in place, it's really about how we, do the initial studies, right? To say, if we're going to be embarking on a rail program, right? If we want women, youth, SMME participation in that program, you cannot go and just say, I'm with my sponsor, we're funding this program, and you find that you have a lost opportunity in a sense that the products are coming from somewhere else, and I'm not going to mention where. So it's really about how are we deliberate. We need to be deliberate, we need to be unapologetic as Africans, to then say, even if you have a limit to say 70% of what we're going to be doing here will be going to SMMEs. But another thing as well is how we then capacitate, and that's where the organizations like the GDA then come in. It's going to take collaboration and deliberate collaboration at that, and where we insist on women participation, women, and I'm not talking at ownership level, because that's really more on the superficial side, if I could put it that way, because the lady would be an owner, or the ladies would own, but in actually participating in the value chain, doing the jobs.
So the ambassador mentioned the issue of political will, of leadership, and we know that private sector investment is stagnant precisely because of low business confidence. And some of it is due to lack of accountability. So what needs to happen now to fast track some of these things? Because
I think what needs to happen now is decisiveness. We actually need decisiveness at government level. We don't need planning after conference and talking. We need execution, and I think that's what's important. I mean, when you look at infrastructure has been identified specifically for South Africa as an economic stimulus. All of us are now focusing on how to get this infrastructure agenda going, and it's important for all of us to really make sure that we all do our part. It's going to take collaboration, it's going to take decisiveness at government level, because government cannot do it on their own. And we are here, private sector, state-owned entities, we can actually, in my view, I think we can make it happen, between ourselves. I mean, His Excellency, touched on governance, and I think one of the challenges that we have as Africans, we really like to benchmark ourselves against other places. I mean, there's nothing wrong with learning from others, but we have specific challenges that are Africa-specific, and we actually need to develop our own solutions, and not adopt for the sake of adopting because it's worked. Our situation is different.
So I'm curious how we're going to do that. And Humphrey, one of the issues that the ambassador spoke about was decisiveness on the kind of partners we choose, or the partnerships that we develop. And if we're talking about decisiveness, for instance, if we're talking about developing this African continental free trade area, and the kind of agreements, looking at how African countries comported themselves on the EPAs, for instance. I mean, there's some lessons to learn there. What are the fundamentals, though, that have seen such divergent views? I'm just touching on some of what he raised, if you can comment on that. Misila spoke about how should businesses understand the engagement with the bank, what is needed. If you could also just clarify that, the tools, the platforms, etc.
No, thank you. Thanks a lot. perhaps to start with what she said, before I come to His Excellency, who raised very pertinent point there. Two things. First, to appreciate the fact that you expressed willingness to go outside of South Africa. I think that is really what we are talking about. And we cannot reshape the fundamentals of our trade and development trajectory without economies like South Africa, the most industrialized country in Africa by far, not playing its part. So that is appreciated. However, you need to match that with action, deliberate action. And I know that part of the challenges that, when I say you, I mean South Africans, have had is lack of information about where and what to do elsewhere, especially outside of SADC. And what I think Ambassador said earlier on during his speech is he was asking for what can Egyptians do with South Africans in the main. That's the question that he was asking for. And he had approached a university in Cairo and also the African Export-Import Bank. Incidentally, that is also one of the problems that we as a bank who found as a challenge to militating against intra-African trade. And we deliberately set up a department we call Trade Information Service. And actually that department is headed by a South African. So their job, their day job is actually to identify such information, where they exist, and share it with those that need it. So they twin and matchmake and say to the South African businesses, in Egypt, you can actually import agricultural goods. You may know, of course, you lived in Egypt. I lived there for 10 years. That Egypt is a net exporter of agricultural produce, even though it is a desert country. It rains in Egypt just about 3 times in a year. Yet they are effectively self-sufficient when it comes to agriculture, and they export. Why is that? There are some other countries in this region that have ample land, enough rainfall, but yet they import foodstuff. So that is where we can play a role to give that information that you need to tell you which countries you need to go based on your own comparative advantage, and then to encourage you. But of course, beyond that, having information in itself is not enough. It's, yes, then what? You will still not be very comfortable in doing business in that country. So if I say to you to go to Burkina Faso, for instance, you know the opportunities that exist there, but you don't know. You may think that tomorrow your goods will be expropriated or the government action, those sort of things. Country risk issues. So we said, as a bank, we have a product we call Country Risk Guarantee Facility, where we say to you, just do your business, commercial business, forget about, hand over the country risk issues to ourselves. We provide you a guarantee that if anything happens to you as a result of deliberate government action, we repay you. But if you are taking a business risk and you run into problems, again, that's business, that's a different one. If you want to cover that, that is separate. So we have that. We have, an array of things. By the way, I think in 2019 we launched what we call South Africa Trade and Investment Promotion Program. It was a co-branded product between ourselves and ECIC. $1 billion. We said to South Africans, if you want to do business anywhere in Africa, if you need funding or guarantees or insurance, we can provide that. As we speak, we've used $400 million out of that. There's still about $600 million left, which is available to people like you. Whatever it is required, funding, guarantees, insurance, we can provide that. The second point you raised was on rail. So you said rail is perhaps the single most important infrastructure that require. I do not necessarily disagree, but I think rail plays a complementary role to road. All right, especially if you recall that we have 17 landlocked, some people said land-linked countries in Africa. So most times we need the road infrastructure. Rail can take you up to a certain place. You need road to take it to the consumers. So they play a complementary role. But again, just like we are saying, sometimes we tend to blame politicians. Yes, there's a lot to blame them for. But ourselves on the private sector side, I think we need to play our own role. Again, the bank found that Africa has deficits in terms of rail. We set up not a department now, but a cross-departmental committee we call it Rail Finance Committee, to identify railway opportunities in Africa. Bring to the bank finance. It's been 2 years, we haven't seen even one. The ones that we are talking to, because essentially they originate from the government side, it gets lost in bureaucracy. You know about the Eswatini South Africa one, I'm sure you're aware of it. We've been talking about it now for perhaps 10 years. And we've met the South Africans, we've met the Eswatini people, even in some ways the Mozambique side as well. But nothing is moving. They do an RFP, they say, well, come back to you, nothing. The same thing with Angola. Nothing is happening. So, but I think DBSA, there's something I thought she was going to say, which is a product that we both have, called Project Preparatory Facility. So as you are an expert in that area, if you find a rail route which you think you can do yourself as a private sector person, all you need to do is get licenses from government. We will finance the preparation cost for you to prepare for the feasibility studies, business plan, and all those documents that early stage finance, we call it, that banks will require for them to give you financing through what we call Project Preparatory Facility. We give it to you, you finance it, and then you bring it to bankability. But the thing is, we say all these things, but we don't match, most times, talk with action. And then the default party to blame is the government. And I say, yes, it's good to blame them on many things, but that is not enough. So bring good project to us. How do you approach us? I think that's your next question. First, the easiest way is the website, afreximbank.com. But beyond that, I'll give you my card. You meet people from our staff at different times. Send an email to anybody. It doesn't even have to be somebody who's involved in rail. The person will direct you appropriately internally to the right department, to the right party. And they will guide you on what you need to do. So we are committed to supporting Africa to transform. And we have, as I said earlier on, I could spend the whole day telling you the things we have done to, or at least we put in place to encourage Africa to develop. But again, they're not always successful. But I know we may be running out of time. Ambassador, you touched on, as I said, very, very, very key points. Last week, I was listening to a very eminent intellectual, Professor Mabubani. And he said 2 things that would determine the future configuration of the world. One, he was talking to us Africans. So we are in a room, a number of people. Geopolitics, good governance, the 2 things. And you're right. America used to be the leader of free trade in the world. But again, as I remember those days, America is a reference point for hardcore capitalism. And that's really what it's all about. Then Trump entered and started tearing up all the agreements and saying, no, we cannot do this. We're exporting jobs, we are doing this. China sat quiet and decided to get involved in free trade. As I said, they have the largest free trade area today. It's not even AFCFTA. And the estimate by experts are that in 10 years, China would take over the world. Mabubani said that has now been revised because of what Trump did with free trade to 7 years. So in 7 years, China will become the largest economy in the world because they are embracing free trade. They are expanding their frontiers, expanding the areas where they would trade, and concentrating also in their domestic market. The advice was, because America is pulling back from the world, China is pulling in. Europe stands more or less at a distance and is watching. The partnership that was proposed is the partnership between Africa, Europe, and China. Of course, America will complain, for sure. And they will start voting against Africa in the United Nations and all those sort of things. But he said it must be selfish and it must be deliberate. So China, Europe, So his proposal is Africa should actually initiate that so that the terms of engagement would be defined by ourselves. Not cases where, of course, you know, China will call Africa China Summit. America, Africa. Then Russia did theirs last year. Russia-Africa Summit. So calling us to their base and telling us this is how I want us to relate. We need to take the lead. And I think I've seen some very promising things. I mean, you may think I'm an incurable optimist. That is true because I'm seeing, I think, a lot of things are changing. So the direction that we are going, and the political will is much more better today than it was in the past, on many levels.
Humphrey, I am going to have to stop here. I'm afraid we are running out of time.
Okay.
This big stick is not here for nothing.
Okay,
it's also
fine.
to tell me to keep in line and keep the time. Thank you very much, though, for the comprehensive responses. We're going to take the final questions. I know it was in the middle of this room. So, okay, if I take more questions, could I ask that you be brief and to the point? And then, so I can see there are 3 here, there's 1 there, and the question here. Okay, so I'm going to start here in the middle of the room, and then I'm going to move to that end. If I could please ask you, please be brief. I'm already over my time.
All right, my name is...
Okay, he was first, but you can go ahead.
All right, my name is Hope Mpulwane from Aesthetics Software Solutions. It's a startup company that is currently, well, building a marketplace for art and craft curators. But I just would like to add on to something that you mentioned with regards to the integration of rural economies in trade. I think the best way to actually implement such solutions is by using designated marketplaces or designated environments based on technology that connect the seller and the buyer directly without using many channels in between. Because the thought process behind what some brands or rather companies want to achieve through such systems becomes lost, and it actually forgets about the small player. In this particular case, people that perform economic activities in the rural economy. Hence, our product specializes in doing such that by ensuring that artists in this particular case are directly contacted with the people who are most likely to support their brands. Without people in South Africa and in our direct economy needing to rely on other platforms like social media, which indeed have many facets that see people who are looking to expand their businesses being swept under the carpets. Because we all know that when we log onto social media, we don't necessarily log on to look for business opportunities. We just log in for our own entertainment and our own indulgence in information. So we actually looked to ensure that our app in particular, because that's where the world is headed, we need to come to terms with that. That's where the world is headed. Almost all business is conducted through apps and not websites anymore, because people would rather click on something and transact instead of having to type a web address and et cetera, et cetera. We all know the process. So just to also add on to something you mentioned about Africa not being tech ready, I think that there's huge possibilities that we could be, because of the fact that regardless now of global positioning where we are, almost every single person in the country who is up to date with something consumes this information through the use of a smartphone. Hence, we're actually now building apps that could be used by smartphones in any part of the country that can assist people in reaching places that are, are out of reach for them if it were not for these platforms. So I think that's how we could actually, focus on, as you mentioned, being clinical and actually executing these ideas that we have by integrating tech in what we do. So
thanks, Hope.
That's all I
need
wanted to
move on.
add, rather.
Thank you. I really would appeal to you, please be as concise as you can.
Okay.
Thanks.
My name is Masopa Moshweshwe. I'm a leather bag producer. I'm a manufacturer. What I realize in terms of IFTC, it is a very good opportunity for us as a manufacturers and as a small businesses. But what is lacking and what I think that is most important that need to be addressed is the capacity in terms of the production and the competitiveness. Because if those things cannot be addressed, we're just going to be swallowed. I hear what the Excellence is talking about the partnership of the Chinese and the European. If we cannot, because I can imagine if when they started the EU, did they ever think about getting in partners from outside to capacitate themselves or to build themselves, even the Chinese as well? Because I think that we need to work among ourselves to build our capacity and competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Masopa. The gentleman behind you.
My name is Oluwagbemiga Ben Daniel. I'm the CEO of Akomat Media Group. We're a media technology company. I just want to my question is, when His Excellency and Mr. Humphrey were speaking about Africa and all these partnerships and all of that, my question is Africa in identity crisis mode? What's the role of media? Because we've been focusing on manufacturing. What's the role of media and technology in resolving this integral problem of Africa? Because until we know where we're coming from before we can know where we're going as a continent. And for us to work effectively as a collective, we need to be able to use that platform to be able to reorientate the continent and be able to know the importance of working as a unit. Instead of somebody, SADC goes to talk to China, the China comes to West Africa, ECOWAS. No, there's no coherence in our messaging, in our engagement with the rest of the world. And I believe media has a role to play in orientating the continent. And so is Africa in identity crisis mode? Thanks.
Thank you, Ola. Right, okay, I think we've got, yes, the last 3 questions here. Please be as brief as you can.
Okay.
You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Johnny Mutewa. I'm from the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. The question that I would like to ask, especially given that we're talking about the Intra-Africa Trade Fair and all of these amazing programs, just from an African perspective, for the 5 regions in Africa, what's the role of the bank, Afrexim Bank, and of course other players in terms of bringing the African diaspora into this conversation? I am originally from the DRC. I lived in South Africa for 20 years. I'm now working in the US. And I find it much, much easier to do the work that I was supposed to be doing for Africa in the US than here. We know the challenges of racism and Black Lives Matter we saw last year with all of that. But what's the position? How do we emulate the example of Ghana with the year of return in 2019 at a continental level, but also from development finance institutions? The DBSA is there, Afrexim Bank is there. There is so much money sitting outside of Africa. We are going to that money only from a position of Africans are sending money back home. This money is far more than, foreign direct investment and all of that. But what are we doing to empower Africans in the US, in Europe, who want to tap into the African market? I've been doing this work here in South Africa through the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce since 2015. But there are so many people out there in the US, primarily, who want to get back. They don't even know where to go. Ghana has made a blueprint. I think it's one of the most successful countries in Africa in terms of integrating the global African diaspora. How do we use this conversation of what's happening? 1.3 billion people, one single market, versus the African diaspora that see also, that want to get involved. How do you bridge this gap between Africa and the diaspora? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Johnny. And the lady here in the white shirt, and then we're going to end with the gentleman here in the blue shirt.
Hi, my name is Tulang Matoba, and I'm from RPA Nuggets. We are an intelligent automation and AI solutions provider. I've been running an initiative training women in intelligent automation, and I'm targeting 1 million by 2025. So my question is, how do we ensure that people who make decisions that should make an impact for people on the ground like myself and women that I train in preparation for the future of work, in preparation for practical inclusion for the digital economy, how do we ensure that impact for the people on the ground?
Thank you very much. That was nice and short, Tulang. And to the gentleman here.
Good day. My name is Shadrach Bukaba of the Africa Screen Festival. And recently we have had policy discussions with both the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Agreement and the area officials, and as well as the African Union. And from their latest studies, they all agree that the film and audiovisual industry holds immense economic potential for African states, and it can act as a powerful force for promoting the continent's cultural diversity. And but as far as these discussions go, the emphasis appear to be on energy, road infrastructure, and other things, and we seem to be silent on these other industries. What is the bank's attitude towards them?
All right, thank you. So this is what I'm going to do, because we are over time. I know we started late, but there's also a time frame within which we need to finish this panel discussion. I'm going to give my speakers 2 minutes each for their final comments, and if you want to touch on what has been raised, you're most welcome to do so. So I'm going to time you. Boitumelo, I'm going to start with you. Humphrey's laughing because he knows that's got to do with him.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4, go. I think what is key here, Tsepi, that I'd like to highlight is infrastructure is going to be key in enabling the execution of the agreement. In addition to that, it's going to be important as well to deploy technologies that are actually going to, enable that as well. And I think one of the points that that gentleman raised was around how to, enhance digitization. We have an opportunity. The beauty about Africa is when you're behind, like Elia said, you can leapfrog. So we have an opportunity to leapfrog here from a digitization perspective and deploying cheaper technology as we go along. And I think that's going to be quite important. In terms of media, I think media, we need to change the story. That's all I'm going to say. The media focuses on the negatives. I think it's about time we actually start transitioning into a good story and packaging a good story for the continent. On the production side, it's going to be important, like institutions like the IDC and institutions like yourself, start actually looking at what are those initiatives that we need to drive for mass, for mass production, for export purposes, especially on the South African side, and maybe looking at even expansion with the assistance of AfriExim. One of our mandate objectives as a development finance institution is capacity development. And I think what she raised around training, in terms of digital skills, we do have, programs within the bank that focus on that, and maybe we can have a conversation after this engagement.
Thank you, Boitumelo. Your internal clock is working very, very well. Muzi, your 2 minutes is up. You can go ahead.
Thanks, Debbie. Can I have some of Humphrey's time as well? No, I'll be brief, Debbie. I think from the way we view it in our agency, it's similar to how when you get married, you get some piece of paper and you put it somewhere. But the true value of marriage is based on the principle of love is a doing word, right? How you live it. So from the way we see it, we don't treat AFCT or intra-Africa trade as a buzzword. We genuinely believe that trade is a doing word, commerce is a doing word. And as I've highlighted in the previous times where I've had the opportunity to speak about this, we're very pragmatic in making sure that we are driving the right collaborations and the right partnerships with our various sister agencies throughout the continent to make sure that there is a practical hand-holding process of any enterprise that is based in the Gauteng City region to expand its footprint on the continent. But because trade is a two-way process, it's a doing word, we also handhold enterprises coming from these various partners in various countries through the various bottlenecks that have been identified by speakers, by participants, whether they are safety and security issues, whether they are regulatory issues, whether they are information issues. So I think I'll end it at there. From the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency side, for us, we are a practical, pragmatic agency. Trade and intra-Africa commerce is a doing word. We have been facilitating African Gauteng enterprises into the continent even before the 1st of January when the agreement was signed. So our doors are always open to do trade and do commerce with enterprises in Africa and globally. Thank you.
I love your commitment to timekeeping. So, Humphrey, you can see how I'm encouraging you. So your 2 minutes is up, Humphrey.
Okay, so in 2 minutes, I'll try to talk on media, diaspora, and creative industry. So my time can start now.
Yes, you can go.
You are right. I think we need to tell our own stories. So what's happening now is that major stories are being told by international media. So, and that's usually the narrative is negative. I can tell you, recently you may have been aware that Afreximbank led what we call EVAT for the procurement of COVID vaccines on a whole of Africa basis. So we supported that with a $2 billion facility. But I say to you, our media department did a scanning of how that was reported. Most of the reporting on that activity suggested that the $2 billion was provided by the World Bank, even when we actually deliberately released press to the media houses. So again, as I said, we need to be, we are usually the architects of our own faith. So we should believe in ourselves and tell our own stories. Diaspora, to us, we say is the 6th largest economy in Africa, actually, Africa's diaspora. So it's very sizable from a GDP perspective and also number, over 60 million people. And we are just about now developing our diaspora strategy. So it's a good time. If you have some ideas, I'll give you my card as we leave. It has gone through the first reviews. I'm sure before the end of the year, maybe early next year, we'll come up with something that we'll use to support Africans in diaspora. So it will be good to get some feedback from you. Creatives, again, as you can see, it's part of the IATF. We have already started our film financing program. So we have our first film credit facility going through our credit processes as we speak. So we recognize that creative industry is a necessary part of Africa's future. So we'll continue to work with you. If you can also reach out to me after now. Am I doing well with time?
You're done. I give you 30 seconds to wrap up.
Okay, so I think the story is, this event is essentially about the trade fair, which is going to take place in November. And we are trying to encourage everyone to be part of that. Part of the issues, as I said earlier on, is lack of information. So during that event, it will be like a marketplace where people come to display what it is that they do. So we can come there and find opportunities. I think, Johnny, see 46 countries so far that have confirmed. So we have so many countries that will be represented during this event, including private sector players. Over 1,000 exhibitors we're expecting, over 5,000 visitors. So that will be a good opportunity for you to come and also do business development. After which, like we did in 2018, we developed $40 billion worth of businesses. We're expecting similar number this time around. So any business that's developed during that trade fair, Afreximbank is prepared to finance.
I think that's a brilliant way to end it. Thank you so much, Humphrey. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Buitumelo Mosako, who's the Chief Financial Officer of the DBSA, Mr. Muziwetu Matema, Group Executive, Macro Business Intelligence. He's a Chief Economist as well at the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. Mr. Humphrey Mugo, who is the Regional Chief Operating Officer, Southern Africa for the African Export-Import Bank. I really think they deserve a warm round of applause. This has been a very interesting discussion. Thank you so much. So we're going to see, just right on time, see that, Humphrey? I wasn't kidding you. We're going to ask you for 5 minutes to have a set change. Literally, it is 5 minutes. At 5 minutes past 1, we're going to wrap up this day's event. So if you go far, honestly, at exactly 5 past, we are going to start, so please be aware of that. Thank you very much once again. We really appreciated your input and your insight. Thank you very much to the panel.
Ta-ta-ta.
Compatriots, if I could please ask you to take a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, please take your seat. We are now commencing with the last bit of our program. Yes, I'm looking at you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going ahead with our program. If you choose to sit, please do so to stand, please do so outside. Out of respect, could you please step outside if you're still talking? Misela, I actually am going to call you out. Hlala phansi. Yekela ukuxolisa, hlala phansi. Okay, thank you very much. So we are now at the end of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll just allow me to call upon Ms. Janice Costa, who is going to give us a presentation on what we're going to see in November, the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2021, and also a call to action. Please give her a very warm round of applause.
The African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, in collaboration with the African Union and AFCFTA Secretariat, brings you the second Intra-African Trade Fair, IATF 2021, to be hosted by the Government of the Republic of South Africa in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, from the 15th to the 21st of November 2021. IATF 2021 is expected to attract over 1,100 exhibitors and 5,000 conference participants from more than 55 countries, and to generate up to $40 billion in trade and investment deals. IATF 2021 will consist of an exhibition, a trade and investment forum comprising of the IATF 2021 conference featuring leading African and international speakers, and a variety of sessions on, among others, African trade and investment, opportunities under the African Continental Free Trade Area, and training workshops covering exporting, standards and marketing. A virtual trade fair providing buyers, sellers, exhibitors and countries an interactive online platform where they can showcase their goods, services and investment opportunities. African heads of state, ministers responsible for trade, industry and finance, central bank governors and captains of industry will be participating from the 15th to the 21st of November 2021. IATF 2021 is brought to you by Afrexim Bank in collaboration with the African Union and AFCFTA Secretariat, and hosted by the Government of the Republic of South Africa in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, with the support of our official event partners. Intra-African Trade Fair, transforming Africa. To register and get more information, visit www.intraafricantradefair.com.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, esteemed guests, all protocol observed. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share Inter-Africa Trade Fair with you and why we're here today. So, committed to transforming Africa, Afrexim Bank launched the biannual Inter-Africa Trade Fair in 2018 as a unique platform to connect African buyers, sellers and investors. IATF is a bank initiative that is done in collaboration with the African Union, the AFCFTA Secretariat, the Government of the Republic of South Africa and the Provincial Government of KwaZulu-Natal will host the second edition of the Inter-Africa Trade Fair in Durban. Inter-Africa trade is a critical factor for unlocking Africa's economic potential. A strong focus will be placed on recognizing growth opportunities for intra-African cross-border trade and investments. Our theme for 2021 will be Building Bridges for a Successful AFCFTA. The IATF is essentially a gateway to the AFCFTA, heralding what will be the biggest free trade area in the world. The first edition in 2018 attracted over 2,500 conference delegates, over 1,000 exhibitors from over 45 countries, resulting in over 32 billion worth of trade and investment deals that were closed at the event. The second edition of Inter-Africa Trade Fair is expected to actually attract more than 5,000 conference delegates with over 1,100 exhibitors, including over 10,000 visitors and buyers from over 55 countries, who will engage, grow trade, investment on the African continent, And we're actually expecting over 40 billion in trade and investment deals to be targeted at IATF 2021. Our key verticals of the IATF is a trade exhibition, our trade and investment forum, our IATF virtual, our country days, our Creative Africa Nexus program, the B2B and B2G exchanges, our IATF youth program, our IATF automotive program. I'm just going to take you briefly through each verticals just to give you a quick rundown of what they will be. Our trade exhibition component allows government agencies, large corporates, and SMEs to set up your pavilions, enabling you to customize your exhibition to fit your unique requirement and the opportunity to showcase your goods and services. The exhibition will be hybrid, an event that will consist of a B2B, B2G, and a B2B component. A core element of the exhibition involves the hosted buyers program. African buyers from key sectors will be hosted to ensure that pre-scheduled meetings are arranged with exhibitors, resulting in business deals. A minimum of 310 buyers, mainly from the African continent, will be matched with participating exhibitors. An online business matchmaking program will be set up, matching buyers and exhibitors. Speed networking sessions will also be held, where exhibitors and buyers have the opportunity to exchange business cards in a limited time managed format. Currently, we are over 80% of our trade and exhibition space. The Trade and Investment Forum is a 4-day conference that will feature leading African and international speakers and a variety of sessions dealing with African trade and investment. The IATF conference agenda will focus on the theme, Building Bridges for a Successful AFCFTA, recognizing the growth opportunities for intra-African cross-border trade and investments, bringing business owners and investors together to learn, share, and find solutions, as well as conclude trade and investment deals. CANEX, which is Creative Africa Nexus at IATF 2021, promises to be the highlight of Africa's creative and cultural calendar, with hundreds of creators gathering in Durban, South Africa, to exhibit, showcase, and network. Creative Africa Nexus and IATF 2021 will bring the best and brightest of Africa's creative sector through a substantial space, B2B meetings, B2G meetings, and an opportunity and a comprehensive program of engaging conversations, panel discussions, live performances, installations, and screening, with a 2-day high-level CANEX summit on the 19th and the 20th of November. I urge you to get involved in CANEX at IATF 2021. There is no other opportunity in Africa where you can show and develop your skills and meet other like-minded creatives. You'll also be able to learn about the Afrexim Bank products geared to the creative industry and meet successful creatives. Learn, share, and grow, and have this facility available to you for a dedicated 7 days. Be sure to engage with CANEX on social media, as they have their own platforms across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I urge you to register and participate at CANEX at IATF. Get a booth, or make sure that you register for the summit, and make sure that your brand or service is known at CANEX. I urge you not to miss this opportunity. Another key component of the IATF is the Country Day. The Country Day feature allows countries to actually showcase either their tourism, their cultural, or their investment opportunities. And this is dedicated to 6 countries. Currently, we have South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, and Ivory Coast who have taken the opportunities. A new addition to IATF 2021 is the IATF Automotive Show. This will present a platform for car manufacturers, assemblers, OEMs, and component suppliers to exhibit their products and also interact with potential buyers, suppliers, and governments. The IATF Automotive Show has 3 components as follows. It's going to have a dedicated pavilion, an automotive forum, and a B2B and a B2G platform. Another new exciting addition is our IATF Youth Startup Program, and this will provide a platform for youth startups and SMEs throughout Africa to gain support through capacity development and mentoring, networking, access to finance, supportive infrastructure, enabling policies and market linkages. The youth startup segment will have a dedicated youth startup pavilion where the youth can showcase their goods and services. IATF will provide opportunities for matchmaking with venture capitalists and investors, training, networking amongst the other youth and other delegates as well, and we will be running a hackathon competition during this time. We've got our IATF Virtual, which is a year-round platform, and this basically connects buyers and sellers from Africa and beyond throughout the year. So whilst the event is not taking place, we're still making sure that business continues. The IATF platform offers a 24/7, 365-day platform where visitors can visit virtual stands, engage, do business online. We also offer an auditorium where we host various events. Events such as ourselves is actually been broadcasted through our IATF Virtual. We've also got a knowledge center on our IATF Virtual. All you need to do is go to our website, register, and click on IATF Virtual, and you can have access to all this wonderful information. We also got a merchandise marketplace store. This is a chance for you to actually kit yourself out with the official IATF merchandise. And this is also an opportunity for exhibitors to use our marketplace to sell your products. So we urge you, get yourself kitted out. We do have some merchandise on site right now, and we have a great selection of products on sales. How can you participate is the question to the great IATF coming to Durban from the 15th to the 21st of November. You can sign up for a virtual booth and benefit for the whole year, or you can sign up for an exhibition booth and also connect with the 55 African countries coming. Or you can sponsor, or you can sign up as a visitor or a delegate, which is open right now, and you just need to go to the website, and you can do that. Or you can be a sponsor and join our partners who are benefiting from the rewards of being associated to IATF. We offer customized sponsor packages for businesses big and small. As a partner, you will benefit to the access of over 1,000 buyers, 1,100 exhibitors, and over 10,000 visitors. IATF is the only platform where you'll have access to meet the 55 African governments in one place, qualified global hosted buyers, and investors. We've heard from our esteemed speakers today who stressed on how intra-Africa trade is critical for each country. This is a captive audience where all this can be discussed and progressed. This is just a couple of our partners who have taken on the opportunity. It's showcasing our official partners and our official event partners. What do we need from you to do right now? Engage with us on our social media platforms. Go on to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and engage. Please be sure to tag the official handle and use the hashtag IATF. Or if you need any questions answered or you want further information, contact our customer service center. The team is available to answer any questions or to facilitate any information you may require. Or you may sign up to the virtual trade fair and attend our virtual events and have access to the Knowledge Center. Or you can book a stand immediately, register as a visitor, or become a sponsor. I really urge you not to miss this opportunity to be part of this conversation as we develop intra-African trade. We urge you to participate. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We've got a whole team on the ground today. Our website has been regularly updated with current information. Stay in touch through all our social media platforms for the most up-to-date information. And we really look forward to seeing you in the beautiful city of Durban, KwaZulu-Natal from the 15th to the 21st November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Costa. I must say it does imbue a sense of excitement just looking at that lineup, what will be available. And ladies and gentlemen, for my part, we've come to the end of proceedings, at least my involvement, as you've just seen me make my long walk to freedom the last time. So, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure meeting all of you, and I thoroughly agree with the call that you've made, the call to action for the media, and this is precisely why I wanted to be part of these conversations, to hear what you have to say and really learn from the wealth of knowledge that you also bring to the discussions. Thank you very much. I hope that you've enjoyed the sessions we've had. And remember, this has been live streaming on the IATF virtual platform, so you can always go back and watch, see what you've missed, and perhaps just glean a little bit more information. Hashtag IATF, as you heard, if you want to share your observations of the conversations today and going forward. So without further ado, let me please ask Councillor Matshidiso Mfikwe, who's the MMC Finance City of Johannesburg, to give you the closing remarks. I wish you all a pleasant day further, and please do keep safe.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How I'm greeting? Good afternoon. How? So we are so eager to leave. We can't even hear the greetings. I thought you were ignoring me. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the media. Today's event comes just a few days after the President opened the country and took us to lockdown level, alert level 2. A strong indication that South African municipalities should work at strengthening the economy and move towards some normalcy. We would have been squandering an opportunity if we don't use this as part of the convergence in using technology and becoming part of the digital world. As a move towards a truly African world-class city, with its challenges, of course, and being the economic hub not just of South Africa, but of Africa itself, the city has long anticipated that we would need to move towards innovation and ensure that we are forward-looking, we develop forward-looking ways where we're doing business with our communities and the business sector and our partners using technology. It is for this reason that we conceptualize the Smart City Strategy, an inspirational IT-based ecosystem that is not only looking internally, but also striving to ensure that we optimize business processes within our departments, including with our communities and the business sector and the service providers. Ladies and gentlemen, Program Director, when we did the strategy, we had foreseen a time where Johannesburg will work together with our sector in a paperless environment that is powered by utilizing applications, going through cashless transactions, and other technologically driven applications. The time is now where COVID pandemic has taught us to remain in the game and to use innovation and also to take calculated risks. My counterparts in Durban, Program Director, will be happy to know that when we took over the city, and we decided to become destructive, not just destructive and not be constructive. We are in the process of re-establishing, Your Excellency will be happy, that we are reconstructing the Joburg Tourism Company that was mysteriously made to disappear through our Department of Economic Development, because we realize that we need to push Johannesburg to be a destination again for tourists, including investments. We are also enhancing our international relations strategy with a particular focus on attracting foreign direct investment. In fact, the President has given the mayor this task of attracting foreign direct investment into the city. So we're hoping that through the company we'll be able to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, as you take sides and listen to the sounds of the city after this thought-provoking day, thought-provoking discussions and within the plans of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, please remember, Joburg remains open for business, as our current infrastructure upgrades and maintenance projects are indeed aimed at stimulating local economic development after the economic downturn that was brought about by the lockdown. Our treasury unit in the group finance and as well as our PMO in the city manager's office will be happy to assist structure our public-private partnerships. Our executive mayor, my Durban counterparts, will be very happy to hear that we have completely turned around and we're advocating for public-private partnerships. We want to thank Program Director, you firstly, for running the program very beautifully. Also appreciate the organizers for choosing our city, the City of Gold, Mjiba, for today's roadshow. We appreciate this investment. You guys paying the hotel, paying for the food, sleeping here, those who are sleeping here, is indeed investing as well. So we really appreciate that investment. We also want to thank all the participants, all our excellencies, our leaders in their different roles. We have CEOs here, we have senior managers here, we have MDs of different companies and different banks. So we want to appreciate you. Also appreciate our panelists and all of us, the attendees, for this ratio. It has indeed opened our eyes. It has shown that as Africa, with African solutions, we can indeed create a life that all of us want. We hope that you have enjoyed the time spent here and would encourage you to stay for a few more days so that you continue enjoying the scenery and continue spending the money. We know that we don't have a sea, which is a disadvantage for us, but please stay on. To our compatriots in Durban, the AU, the AFCFTA Secretariat, Afreximbank, good luck for the November trade fair, and hoping that it goes a long way in establishing the necessary and much needed investment opportunities for small businesses, for big businesses, so that we do indeed build an Africa of our choice with African solutions. Africa is indeed open for business. We must build the Africa with African solutions, an Africa that our children will be happy to continue growing and continue making sure that it does benefit them. So those of you who are traveling, please travel safely to different destinations. Thank you very much. Ngiyabonga, ngiyaleboga. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Africa's soul is creative. Our music is our heartbeat. Our movies are our vision. Our fashion is our